Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Vable F1 podcast. I'm joined by Callum and Joshua Fletcher. As normal, no Callum McAvoy today. Just a very quick thank you to Callum for taking over in the hot seat last time, previewing Russia. I listened to it on my way up to uni, so I probably wasn't really listening to what you were saying because I was extremely nervous. But I know you did a fantastic job, so good stuff there. A lot to talk about since we last spoke to you, or since I last spoke to you. We've obviously had the Russian and the Turkish Grand Prix since the last episode. The 2022 provisional calendar, I guess, has been put out because obviously, I remember Callum said at the start of this year, we're probably not going to see every single race on the calendar go ahead, and it's probably going to be the same with this one. We've got the 2022 calendar to talk about. And then we're off to America at the weekend. I was very close to putting an American accent on then, but I'm not going to. We're off to America at the weekend for the American Grand Prix. I think it is the American Grand Prix, isn't it? It's not anything else. The American Grand Prix. We'll have a little bit of a chat about the circuit of the Americans and what we think is going to happen. Obviously, we had the Russian Grand Prix a couple of weeks ago, nearly a month ago now, wasn't it? Where we obviously had rain at the very end of the race, which obviously led to some pit stop confusion. Obviously, Lando was left heartbroken after not pitting. Lewis pitted, and it really, really worked out for him. And then we went to Turkey, and we had more pit stop confusion. Lewis wanted to go to the end of the race, didn't, had to pit. And it cost him a possible win. And he obviously ended up finishing fifth or sixth, much further down the order than his championship rival, Max Verstappen, who's 6 points ahead of him. I'm going to stop talking now. Joshua, as a Lewis fan, first of all, how have you been in the last few weeks? And what did you make of that Turkish Grand Prix and Lewis's kind of pit stop, well, I guess strategy or lack of strategy, you could say?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. It's great for racing, obviously, to see someone push him so hard and so far. I'm still got belief he'll win it. It's only 8 points or something, I think. Not 6, even that. So it's still close, but I think Mercedes still struggle this year with their tactics, especially with Lewis. There's sort of seems to be a lack of communication, or there's a lot going on. There's been a few races there where sort of they disagree, or they just don't get them in at the right time. I think back to Monaco, he dropped 2 or 3 places at pit stop where you really shouldn't be doing that track like that. So almost become used to it now, still holding out hope. I still believe that I think he's got it. I think if he can get a good run in the next couple of races, build a gap. But a couple of the tracks suit Mercedes, a couple of them suit Red Bull. So it's going to be close. But I don't know. You never know with Hamilton. He always seems to put out the bag, even when people doubt him.
Callum, good to see you again. Obviously, we're just talking about that Hamilton stop there. Do Mercedes need to be a little bit more authoritative with Hamilton? Does Bayern just say, right, no, you're coming in, the best thing to do is to change these tyres? Obviously, Lewis is driving the car, so I guess Lewis is kind of in control. But do you think Mercedes needs to be a bit tougher with him, even though obviously that respect needs to be there? He is a 7-time world champion.
Yeah, it's difficult because, and I think Hamilton's maybe the only. So maybe Hamilton and possibly Fernando Alonso and Sebastian Vettel, who you could really argue are bigger than their team. And just due to the success they've had together, the titles that Hamilton has won, he's kind of, not that he thinks he knows best, although he might, he's in that position where he will do what he believes is best. And whether Mercedes can be stronger with him, I'm not sure. Whether they can maybe sit down as a team and work way through it. So you've got to trust us. Just because of the nature of this title fight, there really is no room for mistakes. So I think listening to the team and maybe finding a happy middle ground that suits Hamilton and the team on strategy calls would be the best scenario for both.
And I think with wet races, they're probably the hardest ones to call. If it's, you're going from a soft to a medium, it's kind of a bit easier to try and plan an undercut or whatever. And you can see when tyres are burnt out. But with wet races, obviously, the teams have got loads of data. The driver is obviously on the track himself and knows what the conditions are like. So it's obviously, it knows what his tyres feel like. So it's obviously a lot more difficult. One man that, I was saddened to see fail his pit strategy was also Sebastian Vettel. You mentioned him there, Callum. Came in and said to his team, let's give these mediums a go. Let's give the slicks a go. And it just really did not work, did it, Joshua? It was quite sad to see.
No, it was. He tried the risk. Obviously, I don't know whether there was some confusion on what he felt on the track and the data that his team were getting. But he tried it, he spun, and it just didn't go to plan for him again. And he struggled this season. I think he's put in some great performances, but he sort of also struggled in that Aston Martin car. And I think he's going to take a grid penalty again this weekend, start from the back of the grid. So I don't know, maybe it's a settling in period. We judged Daniel Ricciardo at Renault in his first season. Obviously, everyone's talking about Perez in Red Bull and if he's good enough to compete with Max. So I think next season he'll probably enjoy it a bit more, especially with new regulations. Hopefully, Aston can establish themselves as a maybe potential title challenger.
And I think it's fair to say Vettel's not had a terrible season so far. It's just kind of been what you sort of expect from him, given the standard of car he's in. Callum, just cast your mind back to the very, very start of the race in the first corner. Fernando Alonso was sent spinning around by Pierre Gasly. On commentary, I remember Crofty saying that the penalty Gasly got was harsh. What did you make of it? It's obviously very narrow down there into turn one. Did you think the penalty was justified, or do you think the stewards could have been, a bit more lenient, considering it was the start of the race and it was turn one?
Actually, I think considering Gasly got the penalty, I think out of the three cars involved, so Perez, Gasly, and Alonso, Gasly was the least at fault. I think turn one at Turkey it's a tight corner, but it's one where you can get cars through battling, but maybe not in the wet. So for Perez to throw it up the inside and for Alonso to try it around the outside, both men were putting a lot on the line, and in the wet with cars sandwiched together, it was never really going to work out. I think Gasly had to avoid Perez, but couldn't because Alonso was on his side. So it was always going to be contact one way, and it was just unfortunate for Alonso that it was him that lost out. So I'd agree, it was a very harsh penalty.
And speaking of Sergio Perez, if Joshua, you make your way around to the other end of the track, Sergio Perez had probably one of the best on-track battles we might have seen this season with Lewis Hamilton. I think it was kind of 4 or 5 corners. It was from the end of the DRS zone, wasn't it? Right the way through down to turn one. A really good battle between the two of them. It's a shame Callum M's not here to kind of big up Sergio Perez in that battle as well, because we know how much he loves him. But I assume you were on the edge of your seat and biting your nails, Joshua, during that battle. But nice to see as well that it was Hamilton and Perez rather than Hamilton and Max.
Yeah, definitely. It was great racing, wasn't it? It was proper racing. It's what everyone wants, and it looked like Hamilton got him, and he was going to go and push on and almost probably, I think, you get the lead back, and then Perez got him back, and then you sort of, there was that battle. I think depending on which line you fall into, you thought Hamilton pushed him into the pit lane, or you think Perez went wide and came out through the pit entrance and should have got a penalty for violating track limits. But I think the right outcome in the end, that no further action, and great to see. Obviously, it didn't come off for Hamilton in the end, but I think it was great racing, and I think that's most important for racing fans, rather than sort of having one driver needs to win all the time. It's great racing that's the priority with this.
And Callum, just wanted to get your thoughts on it. I think it was really good to see a driver kind of not break the rules in terms of Perez going wide, but it was nice to see a battle that didn't end in a penalty for somebody, didn't it? And what did you make of it? Did you think it was nice and fair, or do you think maybe Hamilton could have given a bit more room? What did you think?
I think it depends what you class fair as. It was hard racing. So if you're a fan of hard racing, it was fair. But if and I'm surprised if I didn't take any action on either side just because of their track record. Because I think for them, that sort of move maybe pushes the boundaries too far. I think for everyone else, it was great to see. I think Hamilton pushed Perez as wide as he could. Perez had no choice but to go around the pit entry bollard. So I've got no problem with him coming back. And it was just an excellent fight. Perez had to outbrake Hamilton, which is very hard to do because of how good Hamilton is. So I think it really was one of the best battles of the season so far.
And I think if a penalty was imposed there, whoever would have got it, would have lost. If Hamilton gained the position, he would have probably got a penalty for pushing Perez out. And if Perez had have kept the position, which he obviously did, but if a penalty would have been applied, then he would have got that penalty for breaking whatever the pit lane rules are, which I'm going to hold my hands up. I don't read the F1 rule book, so I don't know what they are, and I probably should know them. So yeah, that race finished with Valtteri Bottas getting a win. Joshua, I know you're a Hamilton fan, but really refreshing to see Bottas win. I know we've seen him win a sprint already this season, but great to see him win a Grand Prix for the first time, I think, since Russia 2020, if I'm right.
Yeah, I think we almost all saw it coming. That pressure was off. Now we sort of, although sort of Mercedes still want to win, I think they'll probably go and win the constructors regardless of whether Hamilton wins the drivers. But he doesn't. He almost, I think, for himself, doesn't have that pressure now of he's got to go and deliver every week because he knows he's going, and he can almost relax. He's still getting points to the team with good points, but he's not competing for a seat anymore. He's got a drive. He'll probably be the number one driver at that team next season. And his pressure's off, and he can enjoy his racing for the last, I think, 8 races, whatever it was, since that was announced. 6 more to go now, and it's nice for him. I think he might get maybe another win this season, but get some more podiums. And do Mercedes justice and thank them for giving him so long at the team.
And then obviously, Max Verstappen came second in that one. It was a rare weekend where we didn't really have anything to say about him. I know Red Bull kind of said they really lacked pace in Turkey, which was quite obvious to see. But it was nice. Well, not nice, but it was just strange having a weekend where we weren't talking about Max Verstappen very much at all. And then obviously Sergio Perez came third, who we talked about, and commiserations to Charles Leclerc, who again probably could have stayed on the tyre and finished the race. I think Pirelli came out and said that they had to make the stop. They probably wouldn't have survived. But yeah, commiserations to Leclerc, who probably could have also gone on to win that race and was probably, in the end, unlucky not to be on the podium. Which leaves the championship looking like this. Max Verstappen is obviously leading it with 262.5 points. Hamilton second, 256.5. There's a 6-point gap. Those 0.5s are really annoying. And obviously you guys spoke about the Spa thing when I wasn't here, so we don't need to talk about that again. That's pretty much everything that we've got to talk about in terms of recent races and Turkey. Moving on, I think it was either start of this week or beginning of last week or whenever, between the 2 races anyway, the 2022 provisional calendar was announced. Some of the key takeaways: China has been replaced by Imola. Obviously, we've had a couple of decent races at Imola in the last few years, but Callum, I just wanted to get your thoughts on losing the Chinese Grand Prix for what will be obviously the 3rd season in a row. 2020, 21 this year, and obviously we're not going to have it next year. I think it's sad to see. I don't know how you feel about it, Callum.
If I'm honest, I'm not the biggest fan. I think it's given us good races. 2011 stands out. 2018 with Daniel Ricciardo performing a masterclass in how to overtake there. But I don't particularly think it's a massive loss because we've had some poor races there before. Like we had the 1000th F1 race there in 2019, and it was a shocker. But I don't think it'll be off the calendar permanently. I'd imagine this is more to do with China recovering from COVID and sort of, I don't know what the restrictions are there, but I'd imagine a lot of it's to do with that. I'm happy to see Imola stay on the calendar because this year especially, it was a fantastic race and just a fantastic weekend all round. So yeah, I'm more than happy with Imola over China.
I think for me, as obviously someone that's got into F1 very recently, I've not seen much of China in terms of actual races there. The most I know about it is playing it on the F1 game. I do quite enjoy driving around there. That's probably the only reason that it saddens me to see it go. But Joshua, even better news. We're getting some of the classics back, ones that we always see. They make us get up at very silly times in the morning here in the UK. But Australia, Canada, Singapore and Japan are all going to provisionally return for 2022. Which one of them 4 is kind of your standout and that you're most glad to see back?
It's 2. I really do like Australia. I think obviously it's sort of started the calendar quite a lot in the not recent years when they haven't hosted it there. It almost feels right that that's back on now. Now it's a bit later in the year. Obviously they've upgraded the track. They've made some changes there, so that'd be exciting to see. Also Singapore. I know not many people like it, but I've been on the track at Singapore, not during a race weekend when I was on holiday in Singapore, and I got down to the track. So I like Singapore for more nostalgic reasons rather than racing. But it's great to see so many great tracks back, and I'm sure we'll touch on it in a minute, but a brand new track as well. So I think it's exciting and more races, more enjoyment. I know it's tough on drivers, but as fans, we want to see more racing.
Mhm. Yeah, Joshua mentioned it there, Callum. We've obviously got Miami. We're going to see Miami for the first time at the kind of the Hard Rock Stadium complex, I think is the right way of describing it. We've obviously seen some kind of simulations of laps around the track, and it doesn't really look anything that special. It looks extremely high speed, quite long, fast corners. But you never know what Formula One can throw up, obviously, with the new cars next year. But do you think, Callum, that maybe we've got to maybe just, I don't know if this is classed as a street race, but maybe we do have too many street races on the calendar. What do you think of that?
I'm skeptical about the Miami because the whole doing it around the Hard Rock, a sort of street circuit sounds very Formula E to me, which I'm not a huge fan of. But then I'm hopeful because, as you say, it looks quite high speed for what it is. In terms of street tracks, I think without Miami, we've got enough because you can class Baku as a street track, obviously Monaco, Singapore, and I think that those three alone is a good balance. You've got a quick one, you've got your nostalgic one, and you've got Singapore, which is this big event under the lights. So I don't necessarily see the need for any more. However, I don't think adding Miami will be the last one that gets added, just in the age that we're in where money talks and big cities want to host Grand Prix. And if they haven't got a track, then you have to put one in the streets, which I don't think creates the best racing. So it could be a big problem going forward in the next couple of years.
Yeah, we'll have to see about that one. I think the way it is, it's not technically a street circuit, but the way they're building it is like a street circuit. The barriers are going to be closed. There's not going to be much runoff. That kind of style seems to be, I think, the way they're going with it. So yeah, we've got 23 races in the space of 35 weeks, which just seems unbelievable. We start in Bahrain on the 20th of March next year and finish in Abu Dhabi on the 20th of November. And the early finish, obviously, Abu Dhabi is usually the second weekend of December. The early finish, obviously, next year we've got the Qatar World Cup, the Football World Cup, for those of you that aren't familiar with that. So we're finishing early to accommodate for the World Cup, which starts on the 21st of November. So that'll be the day after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Joshua, how much of a challenge is this going to be logistically for the teams and for fans and for even people like us who are watching it on TV every week, who are kind of used to having a week away from it and then coming back, whereas now it's going to be every single weekend?
They've made it hard for themselves, haven't they? I think I know sort of it's not just easy as fans looking on paper, but I think they've got Miami, then they go back into Europe and then come back to do Canada and Mexico, and it sort of seems logistically you should have had USA, Canada, Mexico sort of not as a triple header, but you have those three in the same gap rather than flying to America, flying back to Europe, flying back to America. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be intense. Even if COVID's still prevalent, I think you get a driver or a team member come down, you potentially lose them for 2 or 3 races if you do triple headers and something. So, I mean, it's going to be a lot. It's going to be very demanding for the drivers. I know they're professional athletes, but that's a lot of traveling. There's a lot to it, but I think it's great for fans. I think obviously for something like this, we're gonna be producing a lot of content and a lot more content on a much regular basis, which is going to be good for us. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be. I don't know if 23 races will stay for the long term. I think we've already had drivers say it's too much, and maybe we'll see some races drop off and go back to a 20 or 21 race calendar, just so there's that bit more of a break. But it's a lot. It's very intense, and I think obviously the World Cup coming into play, it being in the winter is difficult as well. You've got to get 23 races into, you lose almost a month or so.
I suppose as well, Formula One is now, I think that, a lot of people describe it as the fastest growing, sport in the world. Whether or not that's, statistically true, it certainly seems true in terms of, I've noticed the amount of people my age or our age in general that are interested now or becoming interested in Formula One has shot up. So more races can only, be a chance to get more fans in and into the grandstands or either watching in front of their TV screens. We've obviously mentioned about an increase in races in a shorter amount of time. Another increase we've seen, and I know when I wasn't here, you spoke about this, you all had fairly negative views on it, is we're going to see an increase in sprint races, I'm afraid, for next year, gents. So the BBC website says 6. potentially next year, rather than obviously just 3 that we've had this year. Callum, I guess you are going to be repeating yourself, but I guess this is something that you're not particularly impressed about.
It's not that I think I'm glad it's 6 because I was worried it would be more. I was half expecting them to come out and say half of them are going to be sprint races, which I think would be the wrong way to go. I think the sprint race as an idea works. I think the way it's been carried out doesn't. Doesn't mean I think I could fix it, but I think it really depends what circuit they do it as. It's got to be one that encourages overtaking, one that's easy to overtake, and we've just got to hope the drivers start to go for it a bit more. Otherwise, we're going to have races like we saw at Silverstone and Italy. Not an awful lot happened. Italy, I mean, obviously Hamilton lost places at the start, but then after that was fairly pinned in behind the McLarens and Verstappen. But at Silverstone, very little happened in terms of actual racing, bar Alonso's good start. And right, you think you're getting into it, the race ends. So I think six might be a bit of a happy medium between what the fans want and what F1 want to do. But I do think it needs rethinking.
And Joshua, what are your thoughts on sprints returning next year? Do you think maybe we should try something, a different format of sprint? Do you think maybe the sprints, Callum touched on it there, should be a little bit longer? As soon as you're getting into it, the race just kind of ends. And are there any tracks that you think would work or really would not work for a sprint race? So, for example, Monaco would probably be the worst sprint race ever. Your thoughts kind of overall on any tracks that you'd like to see it tried out?
We've obviously spoken about it a number of times. It's so hard to perfect because what we want to see racing, and you almost get to that point of you're starting to enjoy it, or it's starting to get interesting, and then it ends. And I think obviously we don't know what we're talking about in terms of, or in the contrast to F1 organisers. I think for me it almost be better to do that on the Friday to set like you can't even set a qualifying structure, but just to do something and still have qualifying mean something, because qualifying on a Friday to set a grid for something no one really cares about, it just feels pointless. It takes away the meaning of qualifying. I don't know how we'd fix it. I mean, I think we've spoken about, maybe I think Alonso has as well, about doing almost hot laps. You get sort of two hot laps around the track and the fastest times win. That sets the grid. I don't know. It'll be interesting. But sprint races, I think they need some sort of change. I don't like the idea that sets the grid, because then what's the point in doing qualifying? Almost, it just feels a bit boring.
I just think the thing with sprints is, I think the main thing is, they're probably a decent idea, but let's just change it up a bit. Let's make them mean something. Let's make them mean a bit more than setting the grid for qualifying, because like we've already mentioned, the fast cars just come to the front, the slow cars go to the back, and we've just got a pretty normal grid for the race on Sunday, which is then fairly boring. I think just make it a separate event, I think, is kind of the main takeaway from this. And we'll have to see what F1 do next year, and good luck to them. And hopefully they come up with some decent ideas. Some of the key dates for you next year. So Australia comes back on the 10th of April. That's usually the season opener. It's not this time, it's Bahrain. They've obviously, I think, reconfigured one of the corners as well. So that would be interesting to see how that works out. Miami, the new one, is on the 8th of May. Monaco is always one that you look out for on the calendar. That's on the 29th of May, as it usually is the May bank holiday weekend. Canada returns on the 19th of June. We go to Silverstone a little bit earlier than last year. We go on the 3rd of July this time. Singapore is on the 2nd of October, and then Japan is just a week later on the 9th. And then we obviously finish in Abu Dhabi on the 20th of November, as I mentioned earlier. The only other thing I wanted to add in that kind of came into my mind while we were talking about this is that we've had another new track added to the 2021 calendar. We're going to be visiting Qatar towards the end of this year. I think it's the penultimate race, if not the one before. We've obviously got Jeddah to go to as well. But this Qatar track, Joshua, we'll come back to you. It just seems a little bit of a strange one. It seems like more of a motorcycle track than a Formula One track. I don't know if you've seen anything of it.
Yeah, it's very hard. I think F1, I think, probably going there for the money, commercial aspect of it. I think there's been a lot of complaints about going to Qatar, obviously with a lot of issues around that sort of the country and sort of human rights issues and stuff, that fans aren't happy that we're going there, and have suggested a lot of other tracks is still in the Middle East or in Asia that might have been a better prospect. But I don't know. It's on there presumably for a reason. It doesn't really feel like an F1 track. But we'll see. You never know. We talk about this all the time, and then sometimes they surprise us. So we might get some good racing there, maybe not. But it doesn't feel like a track that's going to excite fans for a number of reasons.
And it's not quite in the Middle East or Asia, which is kind of where we are going to be based kind of after, the American Grand Prix this weekend. But we've still not been to Africa in either a very long time or ever, I think. So, an African race could have maybe been slotted in there, or maybe just nothing. But we'll have to see what this track is like. But Callum, the question I want to put to you is, we've just talked about the sprint races. Do you think a high-speed track like this Qatar track, or like the Bahrain alternative layout we saw last year, do you think that could be something that where we could try a sprint race, or even like a different weekend format overall? Just because obviously I don't think we're ever going to see a Qatar Grand Prix again after this year, by the sounds of it.
Well, we won't be seeing a Qatar Grand Prix at this circuit, but I know there's a 10-year deal in place. Although knowing F1, that'll be a street circuit. I think I think we won't see a different weekend format this season, which kind of rules out the whole idea of using this sort of outlier Qatar track to test a new format. I think a new format could be used, but I don't think we'll see it this year. In terms of Qatar as a track, I don't know if it's the right place to go. As you said there, it's a MotoGP circuit. It works well in MotoGP, but it has a lot of fast flowing corners that don't really encourage overtaking for an F1 car. So I'm skeptical about that. I'm not really sure how that'll pan out.
Yeah, lots of issues as well. As Joshua touched on as well, lots of political issues that we're not obviously going to go on to on the pod, but lots of other issues outside of motorsport as well that people aren't particularly pleased with. I'm sure, as we know, Lewis Hamilton will be fairly vocal about that while we're there, and I'm sure the other drivers will be as well. Let's turn our attention to this weekend then. We get a lie-in this weekend. You can lie in until about 8 o'clock in the evening. I think Fridays we're recording this. I think practice one is at 5 or 6 o'clock tonight, something like that. Qualifying is at 10 p.m. on a Saturday night. That's weird, isn't it? And then we've got an 8 o'clock race start in the evening UK time on Sunday, and that is because, of course, Formula One is in America. The Sky pundits, I've listened to podcasts where they've chatted and interviewed the Sky pundits, and they said, outside of Silverstone, what is the best track to go to? And they always say, 9 times out of 10, they'll say Austin, because of the whole atmosphere and the way the event's put on. We know Americans like to do things very, they glam it up and make it all dramatic and everything. But Joshua, you were saying before we hit record that you're not a massive fan of the Circuit of the Americas. What is it that doesn't kind of excite you about the American Grand Prix?
I don't know. It doesn't. I don't know. It's just I've never really enjoyed it as much as I have other tracks. But I don't know. From what I've been reading, it suits Mercedes, which therefore, in theory, suits Lewis Hamilton, which therefore, for me, is a good thing that maybe he'll go on and get max points and bridge that gap. I think even if he might even be able to overtake Verstappen with a win, and hopefully, if Mercedes dominate, I think he might go into the lead of the Drivers' Championship again. So I'm sure it'll be an exciting race. I know a lot of people enjoy it. It's not been one I religiously follow, and sort of know a lot about. But I'm excited about watching it and learning more about the track, and hopefully maybe become one of my top tracks. But we'll see. We'll get into our predictions, but I think it looks like it could be a track that the Mercedes and Lewis enjoy.
Callum, is there anything that's exciting you about this weekend, apart from you can probably have a nice chilled evening watching Formula One, for Friday, Saturday, Sunday? What are your thoughts on COTA, as they call it, the Circuit of the Americas?
It's a difficult one because it's always, just because of the nature of its calendar position, it's either in the run-up to a title decider, or is a title decider. Not last time we were here, Hamilton won the title at COTA. So I think that definitely helps it, because I think without it, I'm not a massive fan of the track. Just like Joshua said, it doesn't stand out for me. And not to say it's a bad track, it's just not one of my favourites. So I think it does help. It's calendar, it's all hotting up now. There's 6 points between it. In the championship race, there's obviously the McLaren and Ferrari battle. So I think that helps it, but I wouldn't say I'm overly excited to go to COTA. I'm just more excited to watch F1.
So not many races to go. We're going to come to that in just a moment. Let's talk about what we think is going to happen this weekend. We'll start with pole position, first of all. I've got Lewis Hamilton to get on pole position, and that's going to contribute to my wild prediction that's going to come in a couple of minutes' time. So I'll put the Lewis Hamilton is going to be on pole position for this one. Joshua mentioned it's a Mercedes track. Mercedes seem to have the edge over Red Bull at the minute, after Turkey especially. So Joshua, we'll fling it straight over to you. Who have you got starting on pole for this weekend?
Also gone for Lewis Hamilton, reasons that we've all touched on. It's a track historically Mercedes have performed well out, obviously. I think Hamilton hasn't won there for a couple of years, but it's a track that traditionally suits Mercedes rather than Red Bull, and it feels like it's a race it needs to perform well in to have a shot at an 8th World Drivers' Championship.
Callum, are you making it a clean sweep of Lewis Hamilton pole positions? If you're not, who is it going to be? And then tell us what's going to happen on Sunday in terms of your top 3 as well.
I think I agree the fact that historically it's a Mercedes track. However, I have said Max Verstappen will end up on pole purely because I think this is a weekend in the course of this season and maybe the course of Verstappen's career, if he performs well, could be looked back at. This is probably, with the remaining races, this is the biggest Mercedes sort of stronghold. And for Verstappen, in the best car he's had in his career, to come to COTA and really put performance in, it could be another coming of age performance from Max. So I'll say Max for pole, and I'll back him for the race win. I think it'll be tight between him and Hamilton throughout. And I think even Bottas, with just the freedom he's got at the minute. So I'll go for Verstappen, Hamilton, Bottas in qualifying and in the race.
Big calls there from Callum. A season-defining weekend this could be for Max Verstappen. Interesting. My prediction is I've got Verstappen, Bottas, Norris. I just fancy Lando for a podium at the moment. I was thinking, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Leclerc, Perez? But I thought, no, we'll give Lando a shot. I'll come to my wild one in a minute. I'm really building this up too much, aren't I? So no Hamilton in there, obviously, as you've probably noted. Joshua, let's come to you. Give us your top 3, and then if you want to bring us on to the wild predictions, feel free to do so.
I've gone pretty boring. I've gone for the same race result as my qualifying result of Hamilton, Bottas, Verstappen. Maybe I'm bigging up this Mercedes dominance too much, but I think Hamilton knows it's a race he almost has to win, especially going into Mexico and I think Canada, where Red Bull traditionally did quite well. It feels really vital that he gets a good result, and I think with Bottas winning last time out, he almost could act as that buffer man. And I've gone Hamilton, Bottas, Verstappen, but inevitably I'll be wrong. And wildcard, I've gone no McLaren top 5, which obviously quite contrasts your prediction of a Norris podium. I think Perez would be fighting up there again, and probably Leclerc or Sainz will round up that top 5. I really like McLaren. I like the 2 drivers there, but I don't know. I think this weekend perhaps they could struggle. I think Lando finished 7th last time we were there, so I don't know. We'll see.
It's interesting, isn't it, with the wild ones? You either, if you're not too sure what to do, you either go for something that's fairly realistic, like McLaren not finishing outside the top 5, or you go for something that's quite unrealistic but could happen. So mine, I probably should have mentioned mine when I did qualifying as well, because I've also got George Russell to qualify fairly well, and then I've got a Russell and Hamilton collision just to kick off their relationship for next year. Whether maybe that's Verstappen pushing one into the other, or something like that. But I've just got a Russell Hamilton DNF collision as my wild prediction, just to make things a little bit more exciting. And obviously that also works with what Callum said about this being a massive weekend for Max as well. If he scores 25 points and Hamilton scores 0, but I just think I'd just quite like to see, even if it happens in any of the last 5 races, I'd just quite like to see something happen between those two, just to kind of see how that relationship's going to start. It could be a bit awkward on their first day back in February or whenever they go back to the factory. So that's mine. Callum, let's pass it over to you. What have you got for us?
Mine's a bit of a climb down from Matt's. It's not particularly wild. It's more of a could well happen. I've gone for Alonso to be the best of the rest in qualifying. Whether that's 4th or 5th, you don't ever. It depends if Perez turns up, then it's 5th. If he doesn't, then it's 4th. But Fernando Alonso, obviously, he's raced here a lot. His Ferrari and McLaren days, he's always performed relatively well here. Obviously, relative to what car he's in, but wise old head, a technical track. I think Alonso could do quite well.
Good stuff. So moving on, then we've got not many races to go. We've obviously got after this it's Mexico and Interlagos back to back, and then after that we go to Qatar, and then it's Saudi Arabia before we then go to Abu Dhabi. I think it's appropriate with what is it 5 races to go now, 6 races to go. That we make up. We made our predictions at the start of the season, which we are going to come and look back on. But I want to get your championship winner right here, right now. I'll start with myself. I'm going Max Verstappen. Agreed with what Callum said completely about this being a big weekend for him. For me, it's going to be Max Verstappen. I just think that something's going to happen in the 5 races. I don't think it's going to be 1-2s for Hamilton and Max for the next 5 races. I think something is going to happen that will give it to one of them, and hopefully, in terms of my prediction, hopefully it's Verstappen that it falls for. Callum, what about you? If you could give me a winner right here, right now, who would it be?
Max Verstappen, but it will go down to Abu Dhabi.
Fair enough. So there's me saying something could happen in the meantime, but I think it would be equally as entertaining if it went down to Abu Dhabi and that final race. Joshua, what about you? I mean, this is a bit of a waste of time asking this question because we all know who you support. So,
my heart obviously says Lewis Hamilton. My head at the moment says Max, but I agree. I think there'll be a big moment. Either if it's between the two of them, there'll be something. I'm not sure it will go down to Abu Dhabi. I think it's the hope, isn't it, that it goes down to the final corner and sort of whatever needs to happen happens. But
no, that would just be awful.
I have a sinking feeling that there'll be contact between those two, and one of them will DNF, and that'd be the title done. Whether it's that race or the next, it would be an insurmountable gap. Head says Verstappen, heart says Lewis. But I've got to stick with what I said at the start of the season. I think I'm going to go with Lewis Hamilton in the end.
You mentioned that final corner of Abu Dhabi, Josh. I can see you sat on your bed behind you there with that TV with the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix on. They're coming to the last corner wheel to wheel, and Lewis loses it, and you're just jumping back. And no, I don't think a flatmate will be too pleased with you.
No.
But yeah, let's hope whatever it is, it's something entertaining that happens that causes it. Let's hope it's not a boring end to the season after the excitement we've all had. Callum McAvoy just messaged me. He thinks Sergio Perez is still going to win the championship from here, so I don't think that's going to happen. But we shall have to wait and see. Great to be back. Great to be speaking to two of you. Hopefully, we'll speak a lot more as well between now and the end of the season, and it's going to be a good one. Thank you very much for listening. Make sure to check us out on Spotify, YouTube, whatever. Leave us a review, like, or whatever it is you can do. Follow us on Twitter at F1Vavel. Have a look at the website, vavel.com/Formula 1, I think. That's it. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.